And that is kind of, just a small piece of this overall run-in that we find ourselves approaching now, right? Where, we're going to come out of the international break and we're going to play City. And then I think we host Luton at home. Do we play Bayern right after City or do we play Bayern after Luton?
No, I think it's we play Luton, then we've got Brighton,
Then
and then
Brighton.
Bayern, and then Aston Villa, and then
Okay.
Bayern again.
Yeah. So just not an easy list of fixtures. Like after the second Bayern game, we've got, this isn't in order, but we've got Spurs and Wolves and Chelsea, and whatever
United.
semifinals we come
United.
up against.
We've got
Yeah.
United as well. We've got Man
Yeah.
United.
United as well. Yeah.
Oh shit, United. Yeah,
Yeah.
United at Old Trafford. Spurs is going to be away as well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if we get through to the semifinals, it'll be either City or Real Madrid, which is, probably the two hardest teams in in the tournament. Yeah, it's going to be absolutely insane. Every game is going to be a final, and I just kind of want to get both your thoughts as to what the key things we have to do to be successful in the run-in are. So, Rohan, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the key is squad management. that's the main thing. The number of games, the volume, and it's. I've mentioned it many times where January to the business end of the season, that's where you need to make sure that you have a core of players who are going to allow you to maintain consistency week in, week out, to then give you the platform to go hard at the end. And we've done that. We've done that period where, we've had 13 to 14 players who have been playing consistently. We've had a strong level of team selection continuity that wasn't necessarily there post 2024, where actually before this year started, going all the way back to the game against FC Nuremberg to, I think it was Forest this year, where we had made a change in the starting 11 in every single game. We had not kept the same 11. And that's really good in the sense that we were able to give ourselves a strong platform, picking up points well, but also being able to rotate players accordingly as well. But now we've started to play a certain selection of players who have been playing weekly. Granted, we've been taking them off, and I think Arteta deserves a lot of credit there, where we've been winning, 6-0 against Sheffield United, 5-0 against Burnley, 5-0 against West Ham. We've been able to take players off. But now we are not going to get what we want at the end of the season if it's just those crop of players. They are not going to be able to play this many games consistently over the course of 3-4 days. And that's why I've alluded to that. Fabio Vieira, Zinchenko, Gabriel Jesus, Thomas Partey, Jurriën Timber, Tomiyasu, those guys are just as important.
Smith Rowe as well.
Smith Rowe as well. Sorry, yeah, Smith Rowe. Those, in other words, the players who have not been here available weekly are going to be just as important as the starting 11. Or that crop of 13 to 14 players, because they're going to need to be able to come in. They're going to have to be kept warm so that they're ready to make an impact when necessary, where we pick up injuries or we have fatigue that's crippling that's crippling certain players. We need to be able to use these guys. And I actually think you already alluded to it. The wide areas, that's something where Bayern Munich can definitely hurt us. I've maintained that I don't think we have very strong fullbacks 1v1 out wide in isolation. I don't think Ben White's strong enough there. I don't think Kivior's strong enough there. Zinchenko's definitely not strong enough there. And this is why Tomiyasu is one of our most important players from now to the end of the season, because his versatility, he is our most versatile defender. He's the only defender who can play in any position across the back line. He's an excellent finisher option as well. You go all the way back to last season when we played Manchester United, where Ben White was getting roasted by Rashford. He came off at half-time. Tomiyasu came off. He locked him off, completely locked him off. And he's done that many times this season when he was available as well. And actually, before he picked up that second injury, I think it was against Wolves where he picked it up. He was, for me, one of our unsung heroes of the season in terms of what he was able to come in depending on the game state. And I look at him as one of our strongest. He's our best 1v1 fullback out wide alongside Jurriën Timber. I'm not going to expect loads from Timber given the injury he's had, but Tomiyasu is so important because of that ability to close the game off. Kivior as well. Kivior deserves so much credit for what he's been doing post 2024, and that's down to Arteta in the sense that he's been able to give him the platform to flourish, where he's been moving him wider as opposed to asking him to come inside, which he's not comfortable in doing so. But Kivior 1v1 out wide, if the distance is big and he's up against a winger, he will get ripped to pieces as well. He's not the strongest in those situations. Kivior and White are actually really good wide when the distances are close and they've got players within close proximity, because they're both 6 foot, they've got long legs, they can wrap around, and it helps them in those scenarios. But against tricky wingers where they're in isolation, they're not the strongest. And that's why I think Tomiyasu will be so key. So it's all on Mikel Arteta. We know how good he is tactically, but he has to manage the squad, so it's a case of the squad needs to be available, and he's got to rotate accordingly. We've got games against, like you alluded to, Luton, Bournemouth. We don't need to start the same players in those games. We need to use our squad, and that's going to dictate the outcome. So I've got no doubt that Arteta will be ready tactically for any matchup. The worry I have is, can he manage the squad? And that's what we'll have to see.
Yep. I think that's absolutely right. By the way, I think the rotation and the management of squad minutes and kind of preserving some players for more critical moments. I think that is absolutely the key. It's funny. Not a lot of people seem to think that. By the way, I feel like every time I say the word rotation, people start thinking that I want to start Cedric against Bayern because White would have played a few days before. That's not what I'm saying. For anyone who thinks that, it's just, I think Saka is a great example, right? Because Team News and Ticks just came out a little while ago and said that Saka has been nursing an injury for a very long time, right? To the point where England themselves decided to send him home as a precaution. We didn't even have to ask them to send him back, which I think kind of indicates the worry around that injury. Although, according to Tina, he'll also be available for for City. So I think Saka is an excellent example because that is one of our key players. I think him and Rice and Saliba are probably 3 guys in the team who are basically impossible to replace fully. But with Saka, as important as he is, we're going to have to find those moments where we need to put him on the bench and let him put his feet up, right? Luton is a game that I'm looking at as a potential opportunity to do that. Obviously, he'll get some rest over the next week and change. But, if we're up big against Brighton, I want to take Saka off first, right? If we somehow go 4-0 up against Bayern at home, I want Saka off the pitch, right? And, I think a lot of people are kind of under the impression that you can just play your best players week in, week out, every 3 days, 90 plus minutes for 2 months straight. And, if anything happens, it's bad luck and that's it. I think there's just, there's a little bit more nuance and intelligence that goes into managing the squad there that Arteta, frankly, has not been terribly convincing at over his tenure. It's one of his few weaknesses, but that's been something that I've wanted to see a lot of improvement in. I will say over the course of the season, before the injuries started piling up, he was switching up teams between weeks, right? We were seeing different lineups based on the opponents we were up against. So I do want to give him credit there, but this is that make or break time in the season where he really has to get it right. So fingers crossed he can do it. I think that's something that he is capable of, and we'll see what happens. But Sash, what's your take on kind of the thing that Arteta absolutely has to get right, or the team has to get right, in order for us to end this season with a Premier League title and or a Champions League title?
Yeah, so actually, when we were planning this podcast, one of the topics that I wanted to discuss was this topic of squad management till the end of the season and not repeating the mistakes we made last season. So both of you have already spoken about that in great detail. So I don't really have too much to add there. But the one thing I would like to add is that, we might lose a game, okay? We might lose a game. Maybe we away to Wolves, we drop 2 points. It's possible. It's the Premier League. Teams are really good. And, to go on a run of like 10 games now in a row, beating all these teams, it is a really big ask. I'm not saying we cannot do it, but I'm saying it's a big ask, and there's always a chance that you will fall a bit somewhere. The key is when you fall, make sure you immediately pick yourselves back up and go into the next one. Because, if you see Arsenal's last season, what actually cost us was two bad, like, not winning streaks. One was in February when we lost to Man City. We dropped points against Brentford, and to begin with, we lost at Goodison Park. And then in April, it started with Anfield. Then we dropped points against West Ham, then against Southampton at home, and then against City. So if you see, Arsenal's defeats just came in two patches last season. And that's what ended up costing us, right? So I think the key is, if you lose a game or you drop points in a game, and from a mental point of view, we need to put that behind us and then on to the next one. That's really important because fixtures are coming thick and fast. You can't lose one and feel sorry for yourself. And you also cannot take too much pressure. You just need to express yourself and enjoy it. And I think that's what Arteta should tell the players, enjoy it. Because last season, much as my brother Rohan abused Rob Holding a lot towards the end for how bad he was, I think there was a bit more to it than just Rob Holding. So against Southampton side, who are 18th, I think we can beat them, even having Sham as the left back and myself as the right back. Or maybe we can beat them having one of us on the pitch. It's possible. You can beat them with 10 men. Southampton are not good. You're playing at the Emirates, you can beat them. And Rob Holding is still a professional footballer who's been part of 2 FA Cup winning teams in the
For God's sake.
Let's first of all put some respect on his name.
Why are you bringing that back up?
I mean, I'm bringing the FA Cups back. That's it's a good memory. That.
But also, I think the point that you mentioned, we tend to lose games in clusters under Arteta. So 2 seasons ago, it was obviously, like you alluded to, Brentford, Chelsea, Man City at the start of the season. Then middle of the season, we lost to Brighton, Southampton, and Crystal Palace. Then last season, it was the points we dropped against Brentford, Man City, Everton, like you alluded to. Then it was Southampton, West Ham, Liverpool. So it's in groups of 3. That can't happen. It can't happen. And
exactly.
The ability to react to moments of adversity is what defines you as a player. When it's all going really well, that's great. But when you have moments of adversity, that's when you need to be able to react at your best. And actually, I'd say this team has done that in many different ways throughout the course of last season and this season, but they've not done it in crunch time. That's the key. They've not done it in crunch time. And this is where I can't give you an opinion on what's going to happen, because I've got no idea. I've got nothing there that suggests that they can do it in that period, because I do have confidence that this team is different, but I don't know how they're going to be able to react to pressure when it's really, really tough, and we know how good this team is, but external factors can still drive what happens, and that can dictate how good you are of a player as well. So that's what's really going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I will also say this. I think there's some positive signs in that regard this season, because you look at some of the games last season that we lost, like example, City at home. We're finding ways, I think, to overcome some obstacles. Even winning at Goodison Park, as bad as Everton are, I still think that's huge for Arsenal, because we haven't beaten them since 2017. So I think we have shown that, okay, we're overcoming some obstacles. Maybe we're creating other obstacles, because at times the form has been a bit patchy this season, which is okay. But I think we're now first. We're going into the crunch time. So I think we have it in our hands. So it's up to us now to, apply those finishing touches.